Welcome to episode 53 of the Whole Being Zone. This is Wendy Reese, and I am with my dear friend and very respected colleague, Silvia Bianco, who is more commonly known as Chef Silvia. Sylvia's been a chef for a little over 20 years, and I think knowing her story is always an interesting one for me to hear multiple times because she moved into chefing much like how I moved into yoga. It was unexpected and yet very much a calling. And over the period of time that she was working as a chef, she was introduced to A Course in Miracles. And that started coming through in her writing of her monthly newsletter and has led to a new project called Miracles and the Chef. And you can find that at www.miraclesandthechef.com. And I'll have links to both that and the Chef Silvia website. So welcome, Silvia. I'm so glad to get to have this conversation with you finally.
Oh, yes, me too, Wendy. I'm so glad to hear your voice, and I'm happy to do this. I'm happy to be here.
So for anybody who's new to the Whole Being Zone, I'll give you a brief history. I joined Marie Forleo's B School in 2013, and I met Sylvia in B School, and the minute I heard her voice in a office hours call, she was asking a question to Marie Forleo. I knew I had to meet her. I knew I'd actually known her somewhere in another lifetime, and I had to meet this woman. And we finally got to meet this past summer, and the minute we walked up, did we stop talking for like 48 hours? It seemed like other than being asleep, we were like, no. It was really like going home. And much of our conversation was about A Course in Miracles, and I told her then that we needed to have this conversation more publicly, and the timing has just finally fallen into place that here we are.
Yay! You know what, Wendy, if I can say something about that, I think
Sure.
that's how the Course in Miracles work. You get this prompting, this spark, and it could be anywhere from anyone, like someone you meet in the supermarket. So what you felt about hearing my voice is just Spirit's way of bringing two people that need to meet to actually meet. And we don't know where that comes from. It just appears.
Yeah. I have to tell you, because this is audio, that Sylvia is sitting on her beautiful deck that overlooks a beautiful lake, and I can hear a beautiful little bird in the background chiming into our conversation. So if you're hearing a little outside noise, that is intentional. We put her there for a reason because there's so much energy there, and this is just a perfect place to have a conversation over a cup of tea, even if it's virtual. So tell us a little bit, for those people who are not familiar with A Course in Miracles, give us the overview. What is this?
Oh gosh, that's a loaded question. But the Course in Miracles is really just a tool to bring us back to questioning our egos and our minds, and to let us know that it's really a tool for mind training, to be able to distinguish what is false from what is true, because we all come into this world with basically a split mind, the ego mind and the part of our mind that we can call source, that we can call Christ, that we can call wholeness, whatever we want to call it. But it's that higher self that wants to come through, and it has to come through from underneath this layer of all this conditioning of the world that we've been brought up with.
Oh, that's a deep, a lot packaged into one thing. So how did you get introduced to A Course in Miracles, and how has it played out in your life?
Oh my gosh. Another loaded question. I actually found it in 1995, like 10 years before I actually used it. And when I first found it, it it was really too threatening to my, my ego mind. And I said, I don't understand this. I don't get this. And I put it aside. And then it came back 10 years later in 2005 because my neighbor, who was had a shop next door to where my restaurant was, had been a student of the course for years. And she told me about it, but all the years, those 10 years when I was in my restaurant, I lived by one principle, Wendy, and that was that if I see it played out in my life in the outside world, then it had something to do with my inner world. And that helped keep me honest. And when I told my friend about this, she said, well, Sylvia, you've been doing the Course in Miracles and you don't even know it. Because what the course, one of the basic principles of A Course in Miracles is that the outside world is a reflection of what is going on the inside. It's an outer, how do they put it? Basically that, an outer reflection of an inner condition.
Outer reflection of an inner condition. Okay.
Yeah. So when we see something like, for instance, a person says something to us that we don't like, or something happens that we don't like, we tend to think, well, they shouldn't have said that, or they shouldn't have done that, or this shouldn't have happened, or this didn't happen that I wanted to happen. And that all shows us what really is going on in our inner world. So what we want to blame something else or something in the world for what really is a projection of our mind. So, I mean, we in just basic thinking, we have come to see that we can, like with the law of attraction, for instance, which is very popular in a lot of circles, we try and take control of our thoughts and try and manifest them out in the world. Well, that's a good thing because it shows us how our thoughts create. But that's really about our own egos trying to control something we want or don't want. When really the Course is saying, give up control because you really don't know what anything is for. So it's very humbling.
So how does that play out then for those who have been practicing the law of attraction and manifesting? And it feels to me like, I remember when The Secret came out in 2005, 2006, and how big of a wave it was. And it feels like we're on the second half of that right now with everybody talking about manifesting and doing it right and the secrets to manifesting and all of that. And there's an interesting paradox in what you're saying, that we have no control and yet we can create. So talk to me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, the law of attraction is a really wonderful stepping stone because it shows us how powerful our minds are. But it's still us trying to control the situation.
Okay.
Instead of seeing that, let's see how I can explain this. And instead of understanding that, really coming from a humble position and not knowing what anything is for, and that what we see out in the world is really just not, there's an expression that the world isn't done to you, it's done for you, right? And so that you could see what's outside, and like if there's a lack of money, then you can look in and say, okay, I've lacked somewhere in my mindset, in my beliefs. So that's very helpful. But what the Course is saying, it's not even done for you, it's being done by you. So that the world really is a projection of our minds. And so we begin to see that everything that we perceive is really it's a perceptual problem, because we can see that, for instance, it's a sunny day and we'll say, yay, it's a sunny day, but somebody else could say, man, it's been sunny for so long that my crops are not getting enough water. So to them, a sunny day is not a good thing. So it's all a
Right.
matter of perception. So
And we give meaning
what
to
we
all of it.
yeah, we give meaning to all of it, exactly. And really, we don't know what any of it is really for. And so we have to be retrained to be
Okay.
able to really see that, um, to ask, well, what really does this mean? What's the truth about this? What's the truth? And I know that's a hard thing to grasp. It's not something that can just be understood in a few sentences. It really has to go, which is why the Course in Miracles really takes you through 365 lessons that you learn, one each day, and it becomes a whole new mind training on how to look at things, to be able to really see that um, it's all an outer projection of our mind. So in essence, okay, here's a really good way of looking at it. Let me give you a metaphor. Okay, so let's say we're in the movie theater, right?
Right.
And we're watching a movie, and we get engrossed and lost in the story, and we say, oh my God, don't open that door because there's someone with a knife on the other side of that door. Don't open it.
Right.
So if we were to go, so that's a projection on the screen, but really where the movie's already been filmed and over with. And if we were going to change anything about what we were seeing on the screen, we would have to go back and edit the film, right?
Right.
Okay, so when we try and change things in the world and try and um, manifest things in the world, it really keeps us from true change, because it doesn't fix what needs to be looked at in your mind. You're really saying, okay, I'm going to go out in the world and I'm going to make a success of myself, and I'm going to do this, that, and the other thing. Well, really, you're working with the screen. You're working with the effects. And so the world is, everything that's happening out in the world is a bunch of effects. Whereas if you really want freedom and lasting change, you've got to heal whatever it is in your mind that is causing those effects. Do you see the difference?
Yes.
Okay. So then there's real, because I mean, you can fix lack by saying, okay, I'm going to get a job, and that I'm not going to have lack. Well, it's just going to show up somewhere else, maybe in a lack of a relationship, a lack in having enough, uh, uh, food or people around you, or whatever it is that you're wanting, because the cause of the lack has not been healed. So really, it gets you a way to look at whatever is happening in the world, whether it's good or bad. It's all the same. It's really just saying, okay, let me go look inside my own mind for what this is showing me, and let me heal it there. Because once that's healed there, it doesn't show up in other places. So when you're dealing with the screen, which is everything we see out in the world, you're just fixing one thing, and then you'll need to fix it somewhere else, and it doesn't look the same, so we don't think it's connected. So there's no
Okay.
true healing.
So let's talk about lack, because without revealing anything personal, I know you and I have both played in that illusion for a while. So how has the course worked its way through of bringing that healing to the lack for you?
Okay. Well, I mean, again, we all experience lack in a number of different ways. You could be a multimillionaire and still be dealing with lack because
Right.
you don't have relationships that are that sustain you. So so it can show up in a lot of different ways. But for me personally, when I've looked at what appears to be a lack, first of all, it gets my attention and it brings me inwards. And then when I look at that, I'm able to see, well, is there any lack in source? There isn't. It's whole and complete. So really what I'm lacking is my own separation from that source. Because if I hold myself apart from it, then that is where I'm separate. Whereas if I'm joining with my source, I can't possibly be experiencing lack in my life because there is no lack in
Right.
source. So that's what has to be healed. It's me saying, I'm not enough. I don't have enough. I don't trust that I will be given everything I need when I need it. So I'm holding myself separate from that source, which only wants to say to me, come join me. You have everything. And when you join me, you'll experience that you have everything. So it's me keeping myself separate from that.
How long have you been a student?
Um, 10 years. 10 years,
Okay.
actually. But it's really been in the last year that I felt that I have gotten a lot of clarity around that.
And
Because,
do you find that that clarity comes in moments, or does it, once it arrives, it really arrives?
can you say that again? I didn't quite hear you.
When the moments of clarity that you just mentioned, do you
Mhm.
find that they come in moments, or do clarity just arrive and it's there?
I think it happens both ways, and usually it takes something drastic to be able to say, okay, I'm really off course here, and I have to um, and I want to go deeper. And usually, and that's always a calling of the heart. Like sometimes, we see something happen in the world that just is so upsetting. And then we have to say to ourselves, well, again, I know this isn't random. This is, I've put that there so I can look at what that means within, because we're not, when you're really dedicated to the course, you're dedicated to not blaming anything or anyone at all. It's always your own projection. We're projecting our own movies, so to speak. So you take full responsibility for the state of your mind. And so when you're really set the goal to see, okay, I only want to see truth, even if it doesn't look like that, you're able to, and you're sincere about that, you'll get the experiences you need in order to get you to see that. And sometimes we have to go through a virtual holocaust in order to be able to sift through our egoic mind in order to see it. It has to bring us to our knees.
Yeah. I call that the cosmic 2x4.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And then it finally gets to our attention and we're saying, okay, I don't know, I don't understand all the ways that I've misperceived this, because it's always a misperception of some sort, but I'm really dedicated to only seeing the truth. What is the truth?
Mhm.
And sometimes when something really bad happens, we think that we're being punished because this bad thing that the world calls bad is happening, when in actuality, it's what exactly we need to see in order to get us to stop what we're doing and look at what it's trying to tell us. So we wouldn't be able to heal, like if it's lack, we wouldn't be able to attempt to heal that lack if we didn't see it. So the lack, however it shows up, is a way to get us to look at it. So when these so-called bad things happen, they're really not. And one of the things that the Course principles of the Course in Miracles is we can't tell our advances from our retreats. So that's a powerful one. I'll repeat it.
Yeah, I was going to say repeat it again because it feels like that one bears repeating.
Yes. We can't tell our advances from our retreats.
So what?
Yeah. So when sometimes we feel like a failure because we haven't reached the success that we want to reach, well, that isn't necessarily a bad thing, because that's the thing with the ego is really great at coming up with the spiritual ego. And it'll say, okay, we need to have success out in the world in order for us to know that we're valuable. But what does that really mean? What does that really mean? That we need the world to validate us?
Right.
When we're already, if we believe in our hearts that we are all a part of Source, then why do we need the world to value us? Because then that's saying, I don't value myself, I need to have this outside validation. And I'm not saying that when you really feel whole and complete, you're not going to see a reflection of that in the world. You will. But it's always, what's the purpose for you wanting to be successful? And if anytime you want to be, your purpose is to be successful out in the world, well, guess what? That's your ego.
Right.
Spirit doesn't need that. It doesn't need that. It's really just saying, how can I be used? How can I truly be useful? And that's the goal. The money
so interesting.
The outcome of it is always the echo of that mission. It's never the goal. And that's been a huge one for me.
So within A Course in Miracles, and you recommended a book for me to read when I visited you called The Disappearance of the Universe. And then I just recently picked up my actual copy of A Course. But tell me, now, I'm going to kind of preface this question. I think that there are some people who really do feel a calling to do or be something in this lifetime. And even in spite of trying maybe not to do that, they're very much directed to do it. And there are people who spend a lifetime trying to figure out what their purpose is. So within the context of those people who feel a calling, and with everything that you have said up until now, how does the Course play out with that?
I mean, if they feel a calling to do something in the world?
Right.
Okay. I mean, that's a tricky one, and I had a feeling you were going to ask me this question. Because, as being good people, we want to make the world a better place, right? So we want to feed the hungry, heal the sick, and do all of those things.
Right.
And that's not bad, but what the Course says, it really does nothing, because we're really working with images on the screen. Now, that's a real leap for the mind. But think of it this way, okay? If our true calling is to have a mind who knows, or is our true purpose is to know who we really are, and that is a divine spirit, and that to have a mind at peace, right? Because the Course says, don't attempt to change the world, change your mind about the world. Okay? So
Okay.
if we see these things on TV and we say, oh, isn't that horrible? Look at all the violence. Look at all the lack. Look at all the sickness. Look at all the ways that the world can threaten us. That just perpetuates the story. But when we really get in touch with who we really are, and our purpose is to heal our mind, now, all of a sudden, we have more and more people who are understanding that it's whose goal is to have a peaceful mind, okay? So if you have 7 billion people that do not believe in lack, that have a mind at peace, could we ever see that as a reflection in our world? It's not possible, because the world is a reflection of the mind. And so there would be no war. There would be no violence, because how can a peaceful mind, a loving mind, ever commit violence? That's why the Course says it's either love or a call for love.
So then why are we here? Just to return to that divinity while incarnated in a human body?
Well, the Course would say we're not here. We just think we are.
Okay.
Okay? I mean, because, again, I mean, this is a hard thing to grasp just by listening. It's really saying that we are really still at one with God. But what
Right.
happened was there was this tiny mad idea that crept in within this dream that said, well, what if we could create with God on our own? And that caused the split, which created the Big Bang. And then the ego says, oh my God, now you've really done it. You've really pissed God off. And so you can't go home, but I have a place where you can hide. And that the mind is so powerful that it created the cosmos as a place to hide from our true source, to hide from God, basically. That's why he calls it this tiny mad idea, but it's only in dream. It's dreaming that. And that's why we're all trying to wake up from this massive dream. And that sounds like crazy, but really that's why there is so much mind training that is involved, because basically every concept that the world holds as true is the opposite of truth.
I'm playing devil's advocate a lot because it's kind of my
Yeah.
job as the interviewer. So from this perspective, if one were to reconnect with Source, with God, then there wouldn't be any reason to be in this dream anymore.
Exactly. That's the end of the story. That's why it's called The Disappearance of the Universe. Because where we really are one mind that is so powerful, it created this cosmos. And then to think that, oh, it will disappear when we connect back to Source, that's a terrifying thought.
Well, I mean, it sounds as if it's just death. That
But
we
it's
go through this, and once we've connected, we die. But then there are so many people who both you and I and everyone listening to this knows, who have passed on to the other side, that probably didn't make that connection before they went.
Exactly, because the Course
They
says
did
the
one.
opposite. There is no death. Yet in the world, what do we see? Every single day, Wendy, we see death. We bought onto the idea that, okay, we're here for a short period of time and everybody dies. Nature goes through this cycle of death and rebirth with the seasons. We're seeing it right now with the falling of the leaves. And we
Right.
accept all of those concepts because, again, it's the ego's world. And yes, it has beauty and it has things that are not so beautiful. That's the world of duality. But what the Course is really saying is that it's non-dual teaching. And so it's not for everybody, but at the same point, it says when you decide to, you can't change the curriculum because the outcome is already done. We are all one, and that has never changed. In fact, we're just dreaming that it's different. So the outcome will always be the same. So you can't change that. But what you can do is decide when or not to take the curriculum. That's why we have thousands and thousands of lives where we could keep reliving that separation, that we are not one with Source. And that's why we have separate bodies. We think we have separate minds. We have separate goals. But that's not true. And so it's getting us back to understanding, to uncover all of those concepts that we believe. And the great thing about it on a practical level is that we think that things outside us that we see in the world can harm us, whether it's disease or it's lack or relationships or the weather or germs or whatever it is. We're constantly taught to, okay, you have to, this is how you can avoid that. You can eat the right foods, you can, put a jacket on in the winter so you won't catch a cold, all of these, or you can save your money so that you can save up for your retirement. But what do we all see? We all see that anything can happen despite all the ways that we try and control it. That's why it's not true healing. And so we're always living at the effect of the world because we think that if we play around with the effects and we're smart enough and take control of enough things that are effects in the world, that we'll feel safe. But there's no safety in that. We see that every single day.
Hmm.
The safety lies in being able to heal our own minds, because then we see that we're not a victim of the world we see, that the world is really an effect of our minds. That's why I say that a healed mind could never project violence or lack of any kind or guilt of any kind. So
let's talk a little bit about guilt and shame, because you spent a lot of time talking about that this summer, and I haven't heard it come up once yet.
Okay. Well, okay.
I've been waiting.
Well, because the foundation of the Course in Miracles is forgiveness. So what does it mean by that? Well, it's very different from the world term of forgiveness. We've all heard that, somebody or something happens to us and that we need to forgive it because it's not for them. It's really to help ourselves, because once we forgive it, we can leave it behind and move forward with our lives. But what that basically says is, okay, I forgive you because I'm a better person and I'm going to look beyond that, but you still really did what you did. Right?
Right.
Okay. What the Course says I'm forgiving you because nothing really happened. Since if it's real, if we believe that the world is a projection of our minds, it's nothing really happened. It's a dream of something happening. And so what we see reflected out there is really a reflection of the guilt in our minds from having separated from God or from Source, and the fear of being punished. That's a very, very deep unconscious belief. So a lot of us can say, oh, I'm not fearful of God. I think he's a loving God. Well, we're not conscious of this stuff. We're not. But whenever we see anything that is upsetting, it's really a projection of our guilt. And so when we bring it back to the trace it back inside our mind to the cause is always this guilt, and guilt does what? Every single time, guilt demands punishment.
Right.
So that's the healing, because once we can heal that, we don't have to punish ourselves in all the million ways that we do, that everybody does every day. And everybody does it, or else they wouldn't be here. And so that's true healing, because we heal that, we don't have to punish ourselves in that way. But it's a constant, that's why it says it's about love, and everything else is a cover to love. Because what is Source? What is God? It's love. And that's who we really are, and everything else just covers that up.
Right. I love how the workbook starts out. The first 3 lessons are all about nothing I see in this room means anything. I have given everything I see in this room all the meaning that it has for me, and I do not understand anything I see in this room. And it goes back to, and then 4 is these thoughts don't mean anything. And it's so interesting to me in the way that, and we had long conversation about this summer. I'm still hung up on the word. Forgiveness to me in the context of a course, and the way that you're describing it, comes back more to acceptance of the separation.
Yes, and to say the separation never really happened. It never really happened. So therefore, in truth, we have nothing to forgive ourselves for. And when we can really accept that, then that's why the healed mind cannot project something that is not of love. It would have nothing to punish ourselves for.
Right.
And so that's where the true freedom lies. Because no matter how many things we manifest, they're just props. That's what those first few lessons are trying to show you, that the table is just a prop. It's just something that you've labeled. And that's what quantum physics shows you, that it's actually all connected, and there's no separation between anything on the quantum level.
I had to pause because my Raven friend just decided to fly by and make an appearance at this moment, which and decided to do it very noisily. So I want to talk a little bit about your newest project.
Okay.
And tell us a little bit more about it, how it came about, where you see it evolving and flowing and showing up into this crazy illusion of a world we have.
Okay. Well, I mean, as you know, I had my Chef Silvia site for many, many years, in fact, since 2004. And in it, I've always written a monthly newsletter called A Note from the Chef. And I would always use food as a metaphor for a deeper teaching. But I couldn't really go all the way with that because my subscribers didn't sign up for that. I mean, they would be receptive to how food can show us how we can be more present, how it could be a meditative process, how there's, it's a tool for our, like we need certain tools in the kitchen to help us make a better batter, just like we need tools in life to help us live a better life and things like that. So it's been a wonderful metaphor. But I wanted to be able to really teach these deeper principles, and I had to do it in a way that was not restricted. So I thought, okay, well, I need to have another site then. And then the people who would opt in to hear these teachings would be doing so with a willingness to hear them. And I didn't have to do that in a very general way to a foodie community that really just wants my recipes,
Right.
So I was inspired to start that because then I could, use the connection with food, but not have to. That I can just really be guided as to what to write and let it be that, and not have to censor myself because I was speaking to a more general audience. With Miracles and the Chef, it's someone who's saying, okay, I'm ready to really hear a deeper teaching. And so I'm signing up for that. So it's giving me a lot of freedom to be able to do that. And though this interview we're covering a very broad subject in a very short period of time, in Miracles and the Chef, it's little bites of teachings that I try and set my own self apart and just use myself as a vehicle as to bring forth whatever is inspired. And so I never really know what that's going to be, but it's what I found is that I have a certain skill to be able to teach these deeper teachings, but in a very lighthearted sort of way, which is hard to do in an interview like this. But in on the site, I can do it in much more palatable bites.
Yeah, the blog is beautiful in the way that you bring the stories forth and weave in the Course in Miracles with it.
Exactly. And it allows me, because you reach a point where you cannot compromise the truth anymore.
Right.
And so I can just, deliver it in a very lighthearted way. It doesn't have to be serious. In fact, when the tiny mad idea, the metaphor of that came about, in the Course it says, it's when God's children forgot to laugh. Like, it was just a mad idea, leave it alone.
Yeah.
It's silly, laugh about it. So humor is a very, very important aspect, and being lighthearted is an important aspect. So even though they're deeper teachings, it doesn't have to be in this really deep, serious way. Because we all learn differently,
Yeah, it's been really interesting. On the last day that I was visiting you, and to this moment, I still cannot remember what you said, but it was through your words, I very clearly heard the need to surrender into something I'd been resisting for a very long time. And so I did. And the process that has been coming about that has been really fascinating because everything has been coming in to support it in such a unique way. More fascinating to me is now, as I'm surrendering into that, as I'm reading the Course in Miracles, as I'm going through the 500-hour yoga teacher training, now I look at stuff and I can, it's so interesting to see through it.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the ego pulls back and says, but whoa, how am I going to do this surrender work if that's where everybody's playing in the illusion? How do I get to share this information in a way that they're going to be able to hear when I can very clearly hear it's bullshit?
Right. Right.
The example is manifesting right now, and I loved how you started with that. Um, so it's a really interesting thing. So I think I'm grateful that you went into a very deep subject in the way that you did, and it wasn't just lighthearted, because I have a feeling that the people who need to listen to this are going to hear it and are ready to go there and play there and realize that this on the outside, this really does look crazy because your mind can't get it, and yet the heart does.
Exactly, because it's the truth. And when the truth speaks, even though we're resistant to it, the heart does get it. And and,
Yeah.
uh, and that's, I think, in part what surrendering is all about, because we're taught to really take action in the world and try and fix things out in the world. And it's when we see that those things don't work that we're able to say, oh, God, I give up. I give up. And that's a good thing when they don't work, because
Yeah.
basically we're being shown that we really don't know what anything is for. And then by surrendering it, it's not defeat. It's a very powerful thing. It's being able to say, okay, I, which is the egoic mind, don't forget the ego doesn't want you to be at peace, doesn't want you to be free. It wants to keep you stuck in pain and pleasure and duality and love and hate, and the wheel just keeps going round and round and round. So even if we, especially if we build a successful life, then that is a huge distraction from going inward. Because then if you have a hugely successful life, what's your motivation to be able to say, oh, I'm going to work on giving this up? You have no motivation.
Right.
So oftentimes it's in our suffering that we really say, okay, I just give up, I surrender. And that's a good thing, because then we're able to let go and just um, ask to be shown the truth, ask to be shown the calling of our heart. And when you said, well, how am I going to bring this message for? Well, it's really the ego that wants to say, okay, I'm going to do it this way. And I've
Right.
gone through that where I say to myself, oh, okay, I've got to learn more about Twitter, or I've got to make it on Facebook, and I've got to do all these things that the world says I need to do. And that may be true, but when you come from a place of, you know what, I really just, I have a message that I really truly want to be helpful, and I think this message or this skill or whatever it is I do will be really helpful. You don't have to figure out the why, because then um, you'll get opportunities through people, through situations that will present themselves, and then you'll just be guided as to, oh, I've got to do this, or this is something I need to do. I've got to send this email, or I've got to make this phone call, or I've got to take this course, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So it isn't really what you do in the world, it's how you do it. So it doesn't matter if you're a multi-millionaire or you're a janitor cleaning the floor. It's all really to extend love.
Mm. How often are you writing?
Not often enough. Not often
It
enough.
looked like, I remember there's about 4 or 5 posts on there currently.
Yeah, there's the about page, which really gives you a great synopsis of where I'm going with this, and then
Yeah.
there's 3 posts. One of them, which I think I really love, especially, is the split mind. I don't know if you
I
that
read it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that I had no intention of writing that, and that really came through so powerfully. And after I read it, I realized, it's not me writing it. In fact, this whole journey for me is about letting go the concept of Chef Sylvia. She's just a vehicle. She really is just a vehicle. And it's only when I get into the, oh, Chef Sylvia needs to do this and that, that I realize I'm in my
Mm.
egoic mind and I need validation. Whereas when I'm writing something like that, it's really about, wow, this is a really important message. I can feel its purity. And I would want as many people as possible to be able to see it because it comes from a pure place. And but the how and the that's going to happen is really not up to me.
Right. What have you seen in terms of changes or differences since you began this project?
Um, that the purpose for everything I do is different.
Mm.
The purpose is really use me as a vehicle, period. That's it. It's not about,
Nice.
I want to get so many Facebook likes or or anything like that. It's to really use me as a vehicle.
That's cool. I like it.
Yeah, so the purpose is different. The purpose is different. And that may come about, where, you do something and it will just rock the world, but that's not your goal. And if you
Right.
read, some of the best teachers, that was never they never started out by saying, okay, I want to make it in the world. They're always like, I've got to write this or I've got to do this. And
Yeah.
then what happens is, or doesn't happen, is just whatever needs to be happening. Like Edgar Tolle for 2 years was living on a park bench before he wrote The Power of Now. But he
Right.
didn't write that because he wanted to sell millions of copies. He wrote that because he had to.
Absolutely. I think there's a shift that's definitely happening right now in consciousness that there are more and more people that are listening to that deeper flow, deeper connection, and are actively working towards reconnecting
Yeah,
and getting rid of that separation.
right. Because we're taught and motivated by we have to, you know, um, be successful out in the world, and that means making a lot of money, having a lot of possessions, having all of those things. But really, what is that? And then you die, so
Yeah.
what's the purpose? So you spent your whole life maybe, having a comfortable life, but what did you really do to further your spiritual journey? You didn't. So
Right.
a homeless person on the street may have been more successful than the multimillionaire.
Right.
And then we think, oh well, but I want to, use my skills to make a better world. Well, again, it's what are you really doing? You're still really playing around with illusions. The way to make a better world is to change your mind about the world. And I bring
Right.
it back to, if you have 7 billion people, thinking only peace and love and believing that's who they are, could we ever have the world we have now?
Right.
Impossible. So that's where true healing and true change happens. Because yes, we can feed the hungry. In that, and don't by any means want to imply that if, as part of what we do, it means we're called to feed the hungry. Yeah, go ahead and do that, but also heal your mind about the hungry while you're doing it.
Right.
You know, because it's actually very, very practical, because we are given um, functions to do as a result of how we can be helpful, because spirit will always use our skills and our capabilities in a way that will be most helpful. So chances are, because I'm really good with food and with words, I won't be asked to contribute by being a plumber, you know.
That's true. Not
Yes.
that I haven't seen your plumbing skills. I'm sure they're just fine. However,
Actually,
I've
they
seen your cooking skills, and they are superb.
You know, but even with food, my motivation with food is, yes, I do want to make it delicious, but it's not really about the food. The food is just the hook to
Yep.
get people to eat together. So it's the joining that is the true purpose, not the food.
Communion.
Yes. Yes.
I love it.
Yeah.
Sylvia, you know I could talk to you for hours and hours, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
As proven. But I have to wrap it up for this session. So I really want to encourage everybody to check out, they can subscribe to your blogs, correct?
Yes.
And the Miracles and the Chef and Chef Sylvia will both, I'll have the links to both of those on my show notes for this episode, and we'll also have how to connect to her to social media. And I will say that we've been spending the majority of this time talking about the Miracles in the Chef, but I will say that she puts out some superb recipes that have changed my life for sure. So I highly recommend checking out both of those websites, because it's both very, very worth it. And Sylvia, it is always an honor and a pleasure to get to spend some time with you and talk to you and hear your beautiful truth.
Aw, thank you, Wendy. I feel the same way about you.
Thank you. Until next time. Waiting for this to tell me that